City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
Thank you. I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the American Theater Wing, and these seminars are coming to you from the City University Graduate Center of New York, located on 42nd Street, the heart of Times Square, where the theater, the off-Broadway theater, the on-Broadway theater, and the off-Broadway theater all come together. The wing, you know, created the Tony Awards, the most coveted award in the American theater. But the American Theater Wing stands for a great deal more than that. For example, these seminars are an outgrowth of the Wing School, where Harold Prince taught, and Hal Linden and Robert Prosky and Pat Hingle all learned. And so we go on trying to give you what is the best of the theater so they can share their knowledge with each other and with you. The Wing is the oldest running service organization devoted to the theater and devoted to the community through the theater. From the days of the Stage Door Canteen into our hospital show program, where today we send out live Broadway theater and off-Broadway theater into hospitals and nursing homes. Our Saturday Theater for Children program is perhaps one of the most important programs that we can have or that anybody else can do, because on Saturday mornings, we bring live professional entertainment and theater to the schools, right in their neighborhoods, right in their own schools. And the most important thing is that the children line up. They make a commitment. They buy a ticket during the week so that they know and develop a habit of going to the theater. They know what it is to buy that ticket and plan to go to the theater. And in so doing, they are developing the habit of theater going. They're also becoming a discriminate audience, which I think is extremely important, because the audience then will go to the theater for what they know is good, not because of a review and not because it's just an anniversary going occasion or a birthday. They need to go to the theater, and there is nothing that can give us as much enjoyment and satisfaction as a live theater. I would like to introduce our co-moderators to you. Jean Dalrymple, who is a member of the board of directors of the American Theater Wing, is a producer, an author, a playwright, and I think there isn't any part of the theater that Jean has not been involved in or that can know what to do with and when. And George White, who is president of the Eugene O'Neill Center in Waterford, Connecticut, is a wonderful co-moderator, a very good friend of the theater, and a marvelous developer of talent. And I will now turn the panel and this seminar, which is devoted to the performance, over to our two moderators, who in turn will introduce the panelists to you. Thank you very much.
Well, down on the end, to my far left, is a very lovely girl. Her name is Swoosie Kurtz. And Swoosie, as I'm sure you all know, is in the House of Blue Leaves and won a Tony for her wonderful performance in that. Of course, she's been in many other Broadway and off-Broadway plays, and she also won a Tony for her terrific performance in the 5th of July. So here we have 2 winners of the American Theatre Wing Tony. Next to her is Vondie Curtis-Hall, whom I saw some time ago in a marvelous production at the American Place Theatre in Williams and Walker, the story of the 2 great black men who first came to big time in vaudeville and in the great Ziegfeld Follies. And Vondie just finished playing in Raisin in the Sun for the Roundabout Theatre, and now he's in the Negro Ensemble production of War Games. Is that the right name?
Yeah.
And that opens very soon, as a matter of fact.
The War Party.
The War, that's right. I thought it was wrong when I said it. The
Leslie
War
would
Party,
joke.
you and I.
War Game, no, that was...
The War Party. And when does it open?
It opens November 5th. We start
Yes.
previews tomorrow night, actually.
Oh, good. And now... And this lovely person certainly needs no introduction. You all know who she is. Her name is Jean Stapleton, but of course she's been... She was in our homes for years as Mrs. Bunker. You all remember that. But right now she's starring in Arsenic and Old Lace and giving the most enchanting performance. I hope you'll all go to see her if you haven't seen her already. I just loved her in it, and I loved the play. I saw the original, and I think this is better.
Next to Isabel, and on my far right, is Loretta Swit, whose Broadway credits include, of course, Same Time Next Year, and she's starred in over a dozen movies made for television, and of course is known for the role of Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan in MASH, and is currently, she is currently on Broadway as Princess Puffer in The Mystery of Edwin Drood. On my immediate right is this distinguished gentleman, an author and a director, Ossie Davis. He has appeared on Broadway, films, television, and his productions, as I'm sure you all remember, include Poorly Victorious, which he wrote and filmed, and with his wife, Ruby Dee, he has co-hosted and co-produced the PBS series with Ossie and Ruby, and is now starring with Hal Linden in I'm Not Rappaport.
I think that we usually start by asking someone, and I think I'll start with you, if you don't mind, how you began, what your training was, how you really had the idea of going into the theater, and what you did about it.
Going way back to the beginning?
Yeah, the very beginning.
After the Ice Age. Okay. I always wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be a ballerina. Prima ballerina, of course. But when I went to high school, there was a wonderful, wonderful teacher there, as there probably is here, some person who lights the fire for you. And it was a man named John Ingle for me in California. And I got into his drama class, and I started doing a couple of scenes for student actors, you know, those little books that you get. And I did a couple, and it just, something happened. It made me feel important. It gave me an identity. And also, I realized it was something I did well. You know, it's like, you don't like to play tennis if you're a bad tennis player, you know. You don't like to play poker if you like a game if you're good at it, you know. I suddenly thought, oh, here's something I can do this. And he encouraged me, and that's how I sort of knew that I wanted to become an actress, that I had found what I wanted to do. Then I wanted to go to an English drama school very much. I had a dream of kind of going there. I was an real Anglophile at the time, and I auditioned for LAMDA, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and got accepted, and went there for 2 years. So it was a wonderful, wonderful training ground. I think I would have been better off going to Yale, because then I would have, when I got out, I would have known some people. This way I came back absolutely cold to New York. Nobody knew me. I knew nobody. And, you know, it's tough.
We'll get into that part of your life later.
Yeah, right.
How about you, Vondie? How did you get the big idea of becoming an actor or going into the theater?
I think it actually came later for me in college. Initially, I played piano, and as my parents always say, I later defected to guitar and decided to start playing guitar in bands and things like that in high school. In college, I was a music major in high school. Later, I went to the university in Michigan and came here to Juilliard, majored in voice, and started doing scenes and things in college, and got into a musical, and kind of proceeded from in that direction. I didn't initially. I never thought I could act. I was always terrified of it. I knew that I could sing a song or play a piano or do something like that, but to stand in front of people and remember lines and then do monologues and things like that were terrifying for me initially.
But that's the way anyway.
I took a lot of classes, and it worked out.
Good. And Eugene?
Oh, I'm so happy you started with that question, because I wanted an opportunity to tell you about my connection with the American Theater Wing. After the initial desire to act seized me, just after I graduated from high school, I started in what was not even off Broadway, a group that did little plays in Brooklyn at luncheons for ladies. And Jerome Collymore was the director, and I did Double Damask Dinner Napkins, the sketch that Beatrice Lillie made famous. That was my very first effort. But let us jump now to the American Theater Wing. Hurrah, hurrah. Miss Stevenson spoke of the school from which all of this sprang. Well, that was for returning GI, professional GI veterans who could use their GI Bill of Rights as an individual. They could go and take singing lessons privately, which was the first time that could happen under the GI Bill. And they could go to classes at the theater wing. And there were very few whacks or waves who were returning professional actresses. So they asked for volunteer actresses. So that was my chance. And I went to classes at the American Theater Wing. And it's the major part, along with Pat Hingle and the others you mentioned. I hope you'll put my name on that list. I will. But I had the most wonderful instruction from a man named Peter Fry, who went on to Israel and became a very prominent director there, and from Joseph Anthony, and from William Hanson. And I took dance classes at the theater wing. And then Bunny Wallen became the director of the music department, and I became Madeline Wallen, and then they took me on the staff of the music department, and I then was able to make a little money, which we all needed, and I in turn went out to these private lessons of all the great teachers and less than great teachers in New York City, where and I was the liaison between the theater wing and the music lesson.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The theater wing is a very important part of my life and my training. It kept me going, and it taught me, and I'm so grateful to be back here with the American Theater Wing.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And one more thing. I also, before that all started, I was a hostess at the Stage Door Canteen.
Oh, yeah.
I just want you to know I have found the next president of the American
I don't get into politics.
Thank you indeed.
Loretta, when did you first have these feelings of wanting to?
You know, over the years, people have asked me that, and I have never been able to recall a moment of thinking, oh, gee, this is what I want to be. It was just understood in my head and in my heart for so long, since any time I can remember. It's all I've ever wanted to be. As soon as I could walk, I was dancing. I probably ruined my feet. To this day, I have to take 2 different size shoes because I crippled myself when I was very young. I started singing when I was very young, and my parents thought this was kind of charming and cute and wonderful when I was very young. When they saw I was taking it all very seriously, they started to destroy the mail coming in from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and things like that. They didn't want me to take it too seriously. So they stopped my dance classes, and so being very enterprising at the age of 12, I approached my teacher and asked her whether I could teach the very, very young toddlers on Saturday mornings, and in turn, could she give me some free classes? So I continued my dance studies, and then I left home when I graduated, and my mother and I joke about it now. She flung her body across the door, announcing that I was killing her and my father and my brother and my whole family. And so it's nice, though, when you can look back and laugh at it together, and she's obviously very proud of me today. And I'm very glad that I felt so passionately about it that I could make that break. I loved my family very much, and we are still very, very close. And I started to study in New York. I went to the American Academy. I then found Jean Frankel, who is, till today, my mentor, a great teacher for me. Everyone finds their one person who teaches them everything they'll ever know. And he continues to come to all my productions and continues to be very supportive. And I found myself doing a play with Susan Hayward in Las Vegas, MAME, as a matter of fact. And friends of mine who lived in California told me that I had been working very hard and I shouldn't go straight back to New York. I should stop off in California for a few days. And that's the last thing I remember for about 12 years. But I still managed, as Jean did, to juggle back and forth, to always have time to do a play wherever, you know.
Yeah.
Great. Ossie, what is your story?
A strange tale, sir. I'm here really under creative false pretenses. I am a writer, born to be a writer, educated to be a writer, determined to be a writer, and somehow I got waylaid into the theater. And I was, from a child, determined to be a writer, and I don't know why. I grew up in a very small southern town, and I wanted to write for the stage. I can't imagine why that was the case either. But when I landed at Howard University in Washington, D.C., one of my instructors, Dr. Arlene Leroy Locke, when I confessed that I wanted to be a writer, detected in my accent that I might have come from a place where theater was not as prolific as others, asked me if I'd ever been in the theater, and I said, of course, I've seen the cowboy pictures. And he said, no. Live theater with people on stage, and I said, no. And you're determined to write for the stage? Yes. So, well, I suggest that if you're serious about this, when you leave here, you go to New York and join a little theater group called the Rose McClendon Players. Tell them that you want to be a writer, but in order to do that, you need to find out what the theater is truly all about. You join, you do every possible thing you can, sing, dance, paint scenery, hustle lemonade, programs, direct, sing, act, and all of those things. I did that. I came to that little theater group, and I joined. And at that time, I was 6'2" as I am now, but I weighed only about 125 pounds, sort of elegant, melancholy, black with a sexy Adam's apple lip. My voice was heavy, and I could do things with, you know, grits is served that nobody else could possibly do. And so when the people from Broadway came uptown to see what was happening, they caught me in some of my activities, my learning processes, and made it possible for me to enter the theater as an actor. I never came to stay. I never was truly determined to master the art of performance. It's only because I married Ruby Dee, who takes the craft rather seriously, has often informed me in mid-performance on stage. She's given me notes and made it quite clear that our marriage and partnership depended upon my, mastering some elements of the craft of acting or getting off the stage. So I took the craft seriously and studied with Paul Mann and various other people. But honestly, I'm a writer. I should be home writing right
now. You learned your craft through terror.
Terror. That's true.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
Well, Swoosie, since we started with you, and I said we'll get back to that, how did you get your first job? How did you become a pro?
Well, I'm sure you've all heard of the Theater Communications Group, TCG.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I don't know if they still have them because it's been so long, but when I was starting, they had an annual audition
Yes,
in
they
Chicago.
still do.
And they also have then a professional one in New York, which I also did later. But I came back, and of course, as I said, not knowing anyone, I didn't know where to begin. I didn't have an agent or anything. And I went to Chicago, and I prepared my two pieces, my modern and my classic, and I did the TCG auditions. And there's sort of liaison between actors and all the regional theaters. So I did that, and all of the directors of all the regional theaters are there, and you get a little card afterwards, like a dance card, see how well you've done. And either it's blank or you have one or two people who want to talk to you. I have a lot of people, whatever. I had quite a few people who want to talk to me, so I went and talked to all these directors. And I got about 3 fairly decent offers. I mean, at that point, it was like, $50 a week plus room and board. So I was thrilled, So I went to, the first place I went was Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park. And then kind of one thing leads to another and all that. And I went to the Manitoba Theatre Center in Canada and did a play after that. And then I went to the Charles Playhouse in Boston. And I did a lot of regional theater.
That's a sort of classic background today.
Yeah, it was. It took a lot longer. I mean, I see these people today, and I envy them so, who are right out of drama school, and it seems like they're on Broadway within a year or two, and it just amazes me.
Who?
Don't envy them, because they're going to have to go back and learn what you all
Well,
learned
it's true. It's yeah,
at some point, and it's harder to do it then than to learn
exactly.
by doing.
I got a lot of it out of the way.
That's right. Isn't it interesting that so many of you started in dancing and wanting to be a dancer? Vondie is the only one that I know of that is still dancing. But, but a very good one you do. But is there something about dancing, about learning to use your body in dance that stands you in good stead when you start as a performer, when you start acting? That this background in dancing helps you a great deal of using your body. I'm not looking at the playwright now. I think it doesn't have something to do with it.
I think so,
You
definitely.
have to learn to use your body.
I think physicalization of a character is major. I mean, it is to me. It's one of the clues that lets me then get inside and find out what she's thinking.
Well, tell them how you used your body in your present role. You had a wonderful article about that.
Oh, well, you
Remember when you do that little bit?
Oh, the dog. Yeah. Well, people said, well, did you study dogs? And, really, And they also said, did you study? They also said to me, you must have a history of mental illness. Oh! I found a supreme compliment. I mean, I said, no, you know, the alarming thing is that I don't. I mean, I don't think I do. But, you know, all your life you're watching people, and you're watching this moment of this person and this moment of this person over here, and it just kind of all gets amalgamated and all comes together. But about the dog, no, I mean, I didn't say, oh, well, I have to do a dog now, so I will go out and study dogs. I mean, I've been watching dogs all my life. You know, we've all seen the same thing I have from dogs, you know, and you just get kind of inside the dog physically and do what it would do, and the balance and everything. But I think what Isabel was saying about the physicalization, the dance training, I think, is so wonderful. Which Loretta, you would certainly know more about than me, because you had much more than I did. But I mean, I think it does definitely teach you a form, a structure, a discipline.
I think
which
that's
you can
important
then apply.
word, the discipline of your body.
Yeah. But tell them that you spoke so eloquently about how you made yourself into that position, which is so touching. When I think of it, it breaks my heart.
Oh, thank you. Well, well, what I said very technically about the dog is that during previews, I realized that, you know, what I was doing was okay. It was fine. It was working. But I realized that I was too far forward. It's just a simple thing, you know. And I realized that dogs, when they get up, you know, they're back like this, aren't they? I mean, because they're trying to, and something about the way they're built as opposed to the way we're built makes them, instead of being here, they're here. You know, is that what you meant?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it still touches me when I see her do
it's the difference between being good, you know, between it being okay and between it having real. Oh, well, thank you.
Great.
But authentic or whatever.
How did you do your,
About, well, what Swoosie said is fascinating. And I agree with all of that physicalization. When I was doing Agnes Gooch and Mame, Gene Sachs talked to me about an aunt of his who sniffed. She just kind of sniffed at various strange places, sometimes to punctuate certain sentences. And so we kind of adapted that, and also a little bit of a pigeon thing. And so she sniffed and did, you know, a little bit of, and out of this comes, you know, you find these things. Dance for me first of all, you could start dance in my neighborhood when you were very, very young. And when I was that age, there was no way I could go to an acting class. And what it does is give you great confidence because you have control over your body. And we act with our entire body. If your character is very nervous and upset about something, the body is not going to look like this. So we act with our entire body, and clothes affect our behavior. Rehearsal clothes affects our behavior. I could not rehearse playing Gooch, stay with her for a second, in high heels, because that's not what she would do. So it was orthopedic Oxfords or loafers and loose garments, because that was the character, and it affected the little pigeon and the sniff, and out of this comes the character. So dance is maybe a very good basic training for all of that, because it gives you the confidence, and it gives you the control and the imagination of what you can create with movements and just a gesture. It's a miracle what happens in dance classes.
Well, it's really controlling. Actors have talked about this, of controlling the instrument. The instrument for the actor is the body,
and
being
keeping
able
it
to
honed,
and in touch with that, which
that's
is
right.
terribly
That's
important.
right. But Swoosie, it's much more than just what you do, and I've seen this glorious performance of yours. It's much more than having observed these dogs over the years. We all see them, but what you did was absorb one of these
Yeah.
animals and make
Right.
it. It's just wonderful. If anyone here has not seen this performance, you must.
Thank
Look
you,
at that
Loretta.
House of Blue Leaves.
Magnificent.
What would you like to say about discipline? Yes.
Well, it's all been said very
No.
well. It's essential, the dance. For me, taking dance classes corrected a very kind of awkward walk, when you have to be able to walk across the stage in a good manner, you know, and that helped me greatly. It also helped a severe turn-in of my left foot into more of, a correct position. Doing all those pliés in what is it, first position. And I still do pliés before a performance as part of my warm-up. And definitely
What else do you
corrected.
do? It
So
doesn't
it
matter
corrects
if
your
it's-
walk, and I think there are a lot of people that need that when they're young.
What else do you do before a performance as a warm-up?
I warm up vocally, too. I have 8 bars of something in the show anyway, and
Yes.
so it's for that, too. But it's part of the whole idea. Now, the question was the first job, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, I want to get back to that because I want to, again, acknowledge the theater wing. One of the places where I began to get experience was the hospital shows, and also plays for living,
Oh, yes.
too.
Which came out.
We went on subways to all kinds of schools and did plays for living, and it kept us in car fare as well. So, and solfege, sight reading classes I studied at the theater wing. So, and that I can say in regard to training is important because those who do musicals can learn their songs much faster if they know how to read music. And whereas if you don't know how to read music, you lean upon that person at the keyboard who will bang it into your mind, you know. But it's much faster, and you learn it with a lot more intelligence if you learn to read music. My first job was in summer theater. I did a lot of summer stock, which at that time was the only place we could depend on to go and work. You see, decentralized theater was a dream at that time.
Did you do
We
it in
dreamed
rotating
about it.
rep then at summer stock?
No.
You'd work a week on
A week first, but then it gradually grew into 2 weeks, thank God. But we did 1 week stock, you know, $50 was our top price, $55. And then, of course, my first job with a Broadway management was with Brock Pemberton when Frank Fay left New York and went on the road with Harvey. And that was the first time I'd been west of New Jersey. It benefited me in many ways. I played the niece, Myrtle May, a character ingenue role, and I went all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia, the coast, and everything our company manager said, you should pay us for this tour.
Yeah, true.
So I saw America that way,
Yeah.
too.
I started that way, if I may digress. I was offered a trip to California, and I left my well-paying job in Wall Street and went into vaudeville because we were making that same trip across the Rockies to Vancouver, down the coast and back.
Lovely.
Yes, beautiful.
Bonnie, did you audition for Raisin in the Sun?
Yeah, I did. I auditioned for Hal Scott, the director, and Bob Nemiroff, Lorraine Hansberry's ex-husband. And initially I was saying, well, I'm not going to be able to do this show. I can't do this show. They're not going to hire me for this show. And my agent called and said, hey, well, you've got the show. Can you do it? At the time I was doing Williams and Walker, and we had to do the Festival for the World of Theaters in Baltimore, where everyone was represented, and we were one of the few companies in the States to represent the United States in the festival. And we had a big conflict, and they were starting rehearsals at the time we were going to be in Baltimore. And Hal was very adamant about having me there for rehearsals, for the beginning of rehearsals, because everyone had to be there, and this is how it has to be. And finally, we worked everything out, and I did the show, and it was just, I had always wanted to do Raisin because, or I should say A Raisin in the Sun rather than Raisin, which was the musical, because I think it was one of our great black plays, and also to work at the Roundabout, which is of course a great theater. So I was very happy to do it, and yeah, I auditioned a couple of times. I came in with callbacks, and I was freaking out, and they said you have to do the African accent. So I worked with a Nigerian, a professor from a university in Lagos. We talked on the phone for hours, and I recorded him, and and played it back, and called him back again, and recorded him, and finally got the rhythm of the Nigerian accent. And I was telling him it was such a it was just great to talk to him because he really spoke. I had to do a play with a Jamaican accent before, and I worked with someone, and the guy, I would ask him questions, he would answer with a couple words, yeah. No. It's kind of difficult to get the rhythm of the language, the lilt to it. So.
Did any of the others here have to learn accents? I've always been fascinated by that wonderful ability to pick up an accent and do it as though you were born that way.
Yeah, did you?
It was required of me that I go the other way.
Yeah.
I came with an accent. So, no, I had to study standard classic English to put the G's on the, all the things like that. And, but I've had some experience with the African accent, having directed 2 films in Nigeria, spending quite a lot of time there, and listening to the speech. It's a beautiful speech. I'm a product of a non-traditional theatrical tradition, and though Ruben and I get a lot of credit for being on Broadway and Hollywood, that's truly not what we have done. What we were forced to do for economic reasons was to find that there was an audience to whom nobody was paying too much attention in those days, black community, and that if we went to that community and provided them from their experience and that literature, entertainment, that they would pay. For a long time, of course, this was something we did between engagements, and we found out that the engagements weren't coming. Hollywood had lost our number, and even Broadway didn't know how to find us in the Bronx. We had to begin to take very seriously what to do on stage when there is just you and the audience and a book between you. We had to reinvent the storyteller as the central character, to adapt discipline, speech, body movement, posture, all of those things to a different format. And still it wasn't all that different. It was still theater. But most of my experience and most of the training I got really came from confrontation with an audience like you, standing in a pulpit or standing at a lectern or standing on a street corner doing a poem by Langston Hughes. The instant education you get from an audience, particularly young people, who either like you and listen or they don't, and you sense immediately where they turned off. So that after the performance is over, Ruben and I, constituting our own little traveling repertory theater, could criticize each other in terms of our performance. And we grew to respect and love the storyteller's art and craft as a significant contribution to dramatic literature. And to the degree that I am an actor at all, and Ruby still questions it sometimes. The experience and the things that taught me most of all were those came from those opportunities to perform in a non-traditional medium.
Well, you were a wonderful actor way back when you did the Wisteria Trees with Ellen Hayes.
Well, I think so, but there is something, there was a kind of freedom that came to me as a performer, because I was not ever holding myself responsible as a performer. And those things that tie me up as a writer, because I know that centuries are looking over my shoulder to see what I'm writing, they don't affect me on stage. As nobody's looking, I'm only here to earn the paycheck to go back to write. So I'm free, and out of that freedom grew many wonderful things as a performer under the guiding hand, once again, of Ruby Dee. And I have learned to depend on the kindness of strangers and all kinds of cases. But working in Wisteria Trees with a man like Josh Logan, who comes from the South, and I came from the South, and the challenge of Wisteria Trees was how to do a Southern fried French accent. And being taught by Josh Logan, who had had that experience, and being able to respond from my own command of the Southern dialect and the Southern language, it gave me, once again, a certain freedom and authority that I didn't have as an actor necessarily, but it grew out of my own experience. And working with people like Helen Hayes, Kent Smith, and others, and watching what they did and how they did it, and analyzing their performances, and asking myself questions as to how did they achieve that particular effect with such a minimum of activity. Just watching, being in those companies, acting on stage itself was a great education.
Well, isn't that really, I throw this open to the whole group, isn't that was originally the way anybody learned in the old days? You really got on the stage and you did it. If you worked in Booth's company, I know Cornelia Otis Skinner once said that her father really learned to act by working, daily, first as in the old spear-carrying tradition and then moving up role by role in the theater, and just doing it that way, rather than the formalized training that goes on at Lambda or Yale or the theater wing even. I wonder if that's even possible today. I don't think it is. I don't think we'd have the repertory theaters. I think you're breaking in.
I don't think it would be desirable even.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Yes.
Whether
I agree with you. But one of the things that happens in England, though, is that most of the young people, or even established people, can work with people that are so good that they can learn from them, and so they constantly go back into a company just to be there, just to be working so that they can learn. And I think the one word that's come out of here is learning. It's very important to learn, and you never stop learning in the theater. And I think these seminars are part of that, of learning, learning about each other's trade. Yes?
Well, my thought is, too, that the advantage of classes, acting classes, study of acting, not only gives us knowledge of the craft, an opportunity to exercise it, but it also enables us to learn more when we're watching or performing with others. Our perception is deepened because we've been to class, right?
Right, and we see things differently. That's what I was trying to say about your absorbing the dog. I think that everybody sees dogs and cats every day, but actors begin to look at them differently and absorb them in a different way. Ossie said something interesting about learning from the audience. When I first found myself in California, I joined a workshop company called Words and Music, and we rehearsed and performed for 10 days musical comedies, and then we took them on the road to hospitals and, in some cases, prisons, and performed for shut-ins. And we called ourselves Words and Music because we took words and music out to the people who could not come in to see us. And I did The Apple Tree at the Sybil Brand prison for women. had a captive audience, you might say. But what we learned from that was this audience had no responsibility to behave any which way except if they felt like it, and if we held their attention, if they enjoyed what we were doing, if they agreed with what the performers were saying or the author was saying, we knew immediately they did not behave the way audiences behave. And it was an exciting adventure. It was a real learning experience, and we did it several weekends. And I learned so much from this audience. And when I was rehearsing Drood, I said the same thing to Wilfred Leach. He said, how do you feel? It was 2 weeks into rehearsing, and I was about to open. I said, I think I'm all right. He said, you need an audience, right? I said, yes. He said, I need for them to tell me now where to take certain things. Yes. And in my case, my character talks to the audience and flirts with the audience a great deal. And so I really needed to start doing that to find out what I was all about. So the audience is an absolutely integral part of what yes. each of us do. We have to know from them everything.
I think both you and Jean were fortunate that when you did television for so long, you did it for an audience. And I think that
Retta didn't.
I did not. My crew was the audience. But when the camera would shake from the camera operators laughing at
yes.
what I was doing, that was a great clue. I was on to something really big.
Because I remember they used to say there was so much laughter on the set.
Yes, we had a good time. We also had we had a wonderful schedule. We shot for 6 months, and then we were off for 6 months, and that's, in fact, when I came to New York to do same time next year. So we were able to do so many other things.
You spoke of that type of performance that grows out of throwing the actor into the situation and letting the actor pick up whatever information he or she can. And I'm luckily the product of two different traditions. The older tradition into which I came when I did Jeb and then toured with Anna LaCasta and various other things. I suppose it's almost the tradition of the town crier. You get the line and you say it loud and clear upon the cue. And you deliver your cue and you move where the director tells you to move. It is to some degree theater from the outside. And there is a lot of exciting things that happen when you attack the part from the outside, or when the whole thing takes place without too much introspection and too much thought. But in 1954, Rube and I were invited to join a production of The World of Sholem Aleichem, which was produced by Howard Da Silva and Arnold Pearl, and it had Morris Konofsky and Phoebe Brand, and people who were intimate with a totally different form of acting, a totally different concept of theater. And we were glad to learn from them of some of the interior things that we should concern ourselves about, of the connection between acting as a craft and the tradition out of which it came. So that we had the advantage of being the town crier type of actor, and then learning to adopt and to adapt to what is roughly called the method, where the interior is explored, what you feel, what you think, the beats getting from one to the other, being true to what your feelings, establishing the basis of those feelings. And I think our theater in this country has also profited and been enriched by taking under its wings those other concepts, some of which originated in other places, so that in addition to having the objective, straightforward, sort of one-dimensional presentation, we also have thoughts and feelings and subjective moods as a part of what, as a performer, we can provide to the audience.
That's wonderful if you can communicate that.
Yes.
So many of them keep it for themselves, it seems to me.
Well, doesn't that, and I would say this to you, Jean, and also refer to Swoosie, doesn't that come in a different kind of training? Here is Swoosie has gone to Lambda, but also is aware of the training that goes on in this country.
Yes.
And I think the British tradition of training, perhaps, well, I don't know, everybody has become almost slavish about the British theater, which annoys me, frankly, a little bit. But still, you were trained that way, and I think if you are aware, maybe you can compare the kind of training that goes on at, let's say, a British school as opposed to here.
Well, George, I'm glad you said that, because I was just sitting here thinking, listening to what you were saying, Ossie, about the two different schools of thought being combined. At Lambda, it was, I thought, like one would think that it was going to be the typical sort of British tradition of diction, voice, movement, not superficial, but the externals, And amazingly enough, it was a wonderful balance of both, the so-called method, the internal, the subtext, so forth, and the way to do it, the way to execute it. Going back, just combining these two things, the physicalization thing we're talking about, I was just thinking of a perfect example of what I was talking about. I have to tell you, I'm not a big believer in acting classes or acting teachers that purport the let's sit around and think and feel about how I felt when I was 4 years old and my dog was run over. I mean, that has its place, but it doesn't communicate anything.
Right.
Exactly. If the tree falls in the forest, if no one hears it, is it a noise? Well, unless you are ready to ping that out to an audience, it's useless.
Right.
You're not going to be paid to sit around and have people watch you think about how you felt when your doggy was killed. So you got to figure out a way to get it out. We were doing, I can't remember what play it was, but Michael McCown, who headed up Lambda at the time, brilliant man, now passed from us, but wonderful man. He was directing us, and there was a point at which this actress had to go over to this man in the play and hit him really hard, just slug him. And we were in like the third week of rehearsal, and every time she'd come to this moment, she'd give her speech leading up to it, and then she'd say, oh, and this is where I slug him. And we all, when is she going to do it? And the director Michael would keep saying, oh, have a go, love, have a go, just plunge in, because they're all, have a go, see how it feels. Well, finally he said, all right, the moment of truth has come. We don't have too much more time here. May I suggest something to you? She kept saying, I just don't feel it yet. I haven't built up to that point yet where I'm ready to really, I don't feel it. And he said, I'll tell you what, don't worry about it, okay? Do the speech, however you want to do the speech, and then totally technically walk over to him and hit him or his, shoulder, whatever we're doing. Just as hard as you can, as a purely physical act. That's all. No meaning behind it, don't think about it, nothing. Just haul off and hit him. Well, it was amazing what happened. She did it. And by the mere physical act of doing that, she was suddenly bingo at that point where she was ready to hit him, But if we had waited around, we'd still be there waiting for her to work up her feelings. And sometimes that's when we were like working backwards. By hitting him, then she got, oh, that's what I should feel like right before him. It was great.
That's
What a wonderful explanation.
Yeah, it was a great lesson.
I'm going to have to break now, and we're going to take questions from the audience when we come back. So please have your questions ready, and you will see wing volunteers, and they will tell you where to line up for them. Very short break. Don't go away. Thank you.
If you'd like.
We're continuing the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater. This seminar is on performance, and it's coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, located on 42nd Street. It is just one of the programs of the American Theatre Wing. I'm going to start this session of the seminars by introducing a guest that has come to be with us and to meet you, and we are indeed honored to have David Dinkins, who is president of Manhattan Borough. And I would like to introduce the Honorable David Dinkins.
Thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to join Isabel Stevenson, President of the American Theater Wing, George White, President of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, and producer, director, and author Jean Dalrymple, in celebrating the importance of theater in our city. It is indeed an honor to meet such distinguished performers and friends as Ossie Davis, Vondie Curtis-Hall, Swoosie Kurtz, Michael Sidbury, Jean Stapleton, and Loretta Swit on the occasion of the American Theater Wing's fall seminars. In no other city in the country can such a roster of accomplished theatrical performers be collected in one room at one time. Indeed, the American Theater Wing has been able to solicit the free services of a remarkable number of respected dramatic artists. Likewise, nowhere else in the country could a series of seminars attract such a large and widely diverse audience. Today's seminar is evidence of the importance of theater to New York City community. The American Theater Wing has done a great deal towards supporting the stage arts in our city. As the longest-running organization dedicated to the service of the theatrical community, the American Theater Wing has influenced almost every aspect of dramatic arts. In the last 14 years, these seminars, for example, have educated scores of theatergoers and students of theater on the range and beauty of the stage as an artistic medium. As the president of the Borough of Manhattan, I strongly support the work of organizations such as the American Theater Wing. During this past year's budgetary sessions, I urge my fellow Board of Estimate members to continue funding nonprofit cultural organizations despite limitations of funds. In Manhattan, I was able to budget over $500,000 for cultural organizations. Indeed, in terms of dollars and cents, nonprofit cultural organizations are an integral part of the city's economy, providing an estimated $1.3 billion yearly in revenues. In terms of cultural rewards, the offerings of our city's theaters and other cultural institutions are vital to satisfying the appetite of New Yorkers for the best in the arts. New York is particularly proud of its theater. The dramatic arts are unrivaled in providing education, entertainment, and inspiration. I commend the American Theater Wing for contributing to the excellence in theater in New York City. And please permit me to thank Isabel Stevenson for inviting me here today, and I wish you a successful and fruitful week of seminars. Thank you so much.
I'm indeed grateful for Mr. Dinkins coming today and being able to speak to you. And on behalf of my panel, I want to thank you very, very much. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
We'll now continue. Jean.
Very well. Jean Stapleton and I were talking before about how Arsenic and Old Lace started in the regional theater. And I said, that's the way we all must go because of economics. And she said, yes. So will you tell us about that?
Oh, well, yes, thank you. The play began at the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland. And a lovely marriage between regional theater and Broadway was formed. And this is happening very, very frequently. And economically, it's the almost the only way to do a show because the set was built there, the costumes were built there, and we rehearsed there, and we worked there under a regional theater contract. And when we left, having rehearsed 4 weeks and played 2 and sold out and benefited their season, which we opened, we went on to a first-class contract, you see. Went to Dallas and then on into New York. The producer saved thousands of dollars this way, and it's the only way that a large cast, as we have, for a straight play, 13 people, can come to Broadway.
That's correct.
And so
Wonderful.
it's something we must acknowledge more. And then, of course, the regional theater is benefited by a royalty, you see, which they dearly need and love. And
Which they get from the Broadway production.
Which is important.
And you,
Wanted to talk
Swoosie,
about the transition.
let me ask Swoosie about it. Well, you know, she started off Broadway in House of Blue Leaves, didn't you? And that's another way where
Yes.
you can begin. That's our regional theaters.
That's right. We started at Lincoln
Yes.
Center, but downstairs,
Downstairs.
in the small Mitzi Newhouse, the 300-seat house. And
On a
Moved
different
that
contract.
house 3 times now.
right, we're in our 3rd theater.
Yeah.
Then moved upstairs to the Vivian Beaumont 1,100-seat house, and now just opened last week at the Plymouth on what they call real Broadway. You know. Congratulations, you're going to Broadway. You've been playing Broadway since April, really.
Actually, that play had quite a, we talked about that
Well-
earlier, had a odyssey of getting to Broadway almost longer than an actor or actress getting to Broadway.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it started at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, which George runs 20 years ago this year. And, of course, I was just a child at the time. But it's really had a journey.
Well, there is a story because it deals with I think something we should get into, which is crossing over between stage and film and television and techniques therein. And I mentioned this to Swoosie, something that really I can't resist telling the story publicly, but Swoosie worked with us at the O'Neill for about 6-7 years. And I would come in every year, and people would say, yes, we want to know about your playwrights, but did you find any marvelous performers this year? Uncover any, or showcase, if you will, any new acting talent? And I would come in every year and say, yes. There's a marvelous woman by the actress, her name is Swoosie Kurtz. You all should see her. And endlessly, forever, these people would say, oh, yes, we know about Swoosie. She's too much like and somebody, a famous performer in film and television. Which used to drive me crazy, and to crib from James Thurber, I used to say, she's no more like that person than the Metro Golden Mare Lion is like Calvin Coolidge, but all right. Anyway, finally, at an audition exactly a month ago, someone says, no, she's not right, she's too much like Swoosie Kurtz. She's arrived. There we are. But I do think we should get into, because it goes, now all of these people here have basically done so much in film and television. Perhaps we could get into, how about Loretta, about the different techniques in doing, how you deal with the different media. Yes.
Also, you talked about the time change that occurred.
Oh,
which I
Jean
think
and
you
I were
both
talking
do.
about adjusting
Very
to
important.
having gotten up so early this morning to be here, and reflected that I had gotten up at 5:30 and 6 a.m. every morning for years and years when I was shooting MASH. And now my life has all changed around because I work until 11 and don't get home until near midnight, and then I'm still up for at least an hour after I've done a play, sometimes longer. I'm hungry. It's just completely different. You turn around your life. I find this adjustment easier to make than the other one. I'd rather sleep in. Also, there's just, I think the rewards are more immediate and greater when you're doing live theater. And it's like coming home for me. It's where I started. It's like dying and going to heaven. The difference mostly, I find, is size. What I look for, rather than where, is what. I think if you have a great project, you can do it anywhere. If the project isn't any good, you can't do it anywhere. So that's my formula. I think if it's the Mystery of Edwin Drood, you can do anywhere. I understand it's going to be a film with several different endings, and I think it's just a great, exciting, wonderful piece of theater that involves the audience in a way that I happen to love. I think the audience is the big reason to do a theatrical play. I think MASH was a very successful movie, a very successful series. I think it's just really size and a great director to help you keep in mind what you are performing for. And then that's mostly the biggest difference for me in changing gears and switching gears.
Jean, how about you? You've had the same experience of doing a great deal of television and now coming to Broadway and doing Arsenic and Old Lace so beautifully.
I haven't done the series for 7 years, believe it or not. That's how much time has elapsed. So, and in those 7 years, I've done quite a few, well, at least one a year, TV films, but also a lot of theater, some tours, and of course summer theater every year. So coming back to the stage is not this giant leap, you know, to Arsenic, but I have not appeared on the stage for 2 years. The last appearance was in Millburn, New Jersey at the Paper Mill Playhouse. And so it's not, we learn to go from one to the other easily, in my opinion, because your basic acting doesn't change. You do the same thing on the camera as you do in the theater. I mean, your basic craft, I don't find any difference. The difference is in size. Yes, you put it so well. Size of projection, and projection in different ways, not just the volume of your voice. Projection of your physical characterization, and so forth. So you learn that by doing, and beyond that, you're doing the same thing. Yeah. And I think the discipline of each one helps the other one. Yeah. When a camera reaches into your thought, I mean, it goes in close and looks more at your thinking, probably, and so you are required to be even more honest. Ideally not, but you can't hide when the camera's coming in at you. And I find that's a great enrichment or a great discipline to go back to the theater and not hide, because ideally we mustn't hide. We must do that same truth on the stage.
There are so many people here that want to ask
So I'll stop there.
And I'm sure, I wish you wouldn't, but unfortunately I think that we're going to have to. And I know that they're going to have a lot of questions just on this very subject. So will you please have the first question?
Okay. Ms. Kurtz, what was the role that you had the most difficulty with?
Ever in my whole life?
Ever your whole life?
Me, Swoosie. Most difficulty. In a sense, it was, strangely enough, playing the character I played on Love, Sydney with Tony Randall, the television series. Because, in a sense, there was no character. I mean, they hired me, and they wanted me to do what I do, whatever that is. But I mean, in other words, it was so close to being me that it was really scary. There were no, you had to take and shape it and figure out, what is this character? I like playing characters as far as possible away from me. I think second to that was Bananas in the House of Blue Leaves. I had never seen it. If I've seen something, I can kind of, if I've seen somebody good do it, I can kind of take it, copy it. Don't tell anybody. You take it and sort of make it your own, and it's all been shaped for you, and it's all been, the lines of demarcation have been set. It was hard. Once I found it, it's hard enough to go out there and do it every night, but finding it was really like being a deep sea diver, not knowing what you're looking for. You know you're looking for something, you don't know what it is. It's a brilliant play. Jerry Zaks is a brilliant director, and therefore I was able to find the answers.
Thank you, Swoosie. Next.
Hi, everybody. My question is for Loretta. How did you deal with being typecast early in your career?
Well, it's interesting. I know that we all are to a degree, because the story we just heard about, the Swoosie Kurtz type, I had the same thing happen to me. A friend called me in Los Angeles. She is a casting director still, and she, after watching my career grow in television over the years, called me and said, I think you'll enjoy this. I was in a casting meeting this morning, and they were looking for a Loretta Swit type. You know, when you're in the inside looking out, you're not aware of what your type is, are you? I mean, you're not really linked to how people see you. I don't know what type they've cast me as. I feel, when I look back at the parts I've played, from Gooch to Princess Puffer, or from Margaret Houlihan to Cagney on Cagney and Lacey, which I did originally in the movie. They're just such completely different people. I did the Pigeon sister in The Odd Couple. They don't have any similarity to me, and I don't know what's in the public mind or the casting people. I don't know exactly how they see me. From my point of view, I get a chance to do a lot of different things, and I don't feel pigeonholed by any one of these roles. So far, there are lots that I don't know about that's going on, I'm sure, but I don't feel it, so I'm not handling it in any special way.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think all of us who've been privileged to attend these seminars will agree that this has been one of the most productive in acting. And so I would like to digress and ask a very personal question, because nobody else would dare, of Ossie Davis. I am totally unbiased in his favor. Ossie, you were our guest at the National Academy at one of the dinners, the Television Academy. Oh. And you told us how you got the name of Ossie Davis. I think the people here would like to know, because nobody would ask. And then another time, at a dinner for Dick Campbell, Ruby Dee recited 4 lines of Langston Hughes, 4 beautiful, touching lines that sum up a whole life. Do you remember those 4 lines? I think the audience would enjoy it, too.
Well, I remember several 4 lines, and they all would apply.
About being born and living, dying,
yes,
so forth.
Yes. Well, the mystery of my name is as follows. I was born in a very small town. It wasn't even a town yet, in Georgia, in Clinch County. And a part of the ritual is that when the child is born, you are required to go to the county seat and register the child's name. I was named after my grandfather, whose name was Rayford Chapman Davis. In the South, because of economical reasons, we use the first letters more than we do the name. So when Mama took me to the registrar at Clinch County and was asked what was the child's name, she said R.C. Davis for Rayford Chapman. But somehow the clerk heard it differently, and it came out Ossie Davis. And it was a time and a culture where one didn't question what bureaucracy decided you were. So I began my life under false pretense. Never got out of it yet.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello, my name is Jamie Simon, and my question is addressed for Jean Stapleton. And you kind of already answered it, but I'll take it the other direction. And opposed to your adjustments between the theater and the screen, how did you continue to maintain Edith Bunker for the several years over the series, keeping her fresh, keeping the character growing in that sense?
Well, thank you. That's an intelligent question, too. Well, I think a different script each week helped us keep it fresh. Different situation, which required new responses. That was major. Another thing that kept doing it was the audience, because there was the theater. I was so pleased that we were doing it with an audience. You do that on a tape show, 4 tape cameras, and I felt, I'm still in the theater. We had 2 audiences, and we did a play. We did an episode on Friday, and we did it at 5:30, and then again at 8 o'clock with notes in between. We called 5:30 New Haven and 8 o'clock New York. So we had a fresh response, you see. That kept us fresh. And you see, after 8.5 years, why did it end? Because situations and ideas and conflict of attitudes had been fairly exhausted. And also, we were unable to find that freshness anymore. So we knew it was the time to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine Pfeiffer, and my question is to Vondie Curtis-Hall. What would be the best advice you could give someone starting out in the business?
I would say get as much training as you can. I think, as Loretta mentioned and Swoosie, that technique is really absolutely necessary. It gives you a basis for which to grow and for which to design a character or a dance or whatever. I think dance training, as many acting classes as you can, vocal training, to use as much of your instrument as possible, or all of your instrument, I should say, actually. As much training as you possibly can.
My name is Marjorie Singer. Mr. Davis, how do you feel about the power the New York theater critics have in often determining the success of a Broadway show?
Well, I'm slightly distressed, not only for the theater, but for the critics themselves. It must not be comfortable for the critic to realize that his or her judgment might be decisive in the life or death of the play. Although I don't like it, it is not the critic who would be the target of my animus. I think in our society we do not yet fully appreciate the value of our theater or the criticism thereof. Our culture is motivated more by commerce than it is in terms of what its own dynamics are. So we're sort of caught between that which satisfies us on a spiritual or artistic or aesthetic level and that which makes the difference at the box office. The critic working for an economic enterprise has to perform a certain function, and that function may not have very much to do with aesthetic standards at all. But unfortunately, we live or die by those standards. The important thing that the critic does for the theater is to remind us that the person who has the axe don't know a thing about theater or the craft. So somehow or other, we got to survive.
I'm going to interrupt this. I'm sorry, we won't have time for any more questions because I have a very important question that I'd like to ask. And if each one can answer it in one sentence, if possible. What was the most important influence on you as you came to the theater? Also, I've got another part of that question. Do you have an agent, and how did you get one?
Swoosie, why don't you start? I'll just go right
Why do I always have to be first? I never have any time to think. Okay, two-part question?
Yes. Do you have an agent? Want to start with that?
Yes, I have an agent, and I've had more agents than a lot of people have had marriages. I mean, it's like, what time is it now? Who are you with now? Yeah, I've had about 5. I've been through them all, it's a very. Agents are a hard thing to handle. I find it very depressing talking to agents. They rarely have good news, you know. It's always problematic somehow talking to them. I always hang up and I think, God, I was feeling just fine today before I talked to them. But anyway, but they have a job to do. Biggest influence on, I tell you, the biggest influence on me is working with great directors. I find working with great directors, or even very, very good directors, a major acting lesson. I save notes from old plays that I did 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. I save them and I apply them to plays I do now from great directors, because they always apply. It doesn't mean to be about that specific moment. It can apply. It's just, I love getting notes from great directors.
Bonnie, do you have an agent?
Yeah, I do. I work with someone who was on your panel before, Lionel Lawner.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, I've been with him.
and I would say, too, as a bit of more advice to the person who asked about show business, is have tenacity when dealing with agents, because it's so difficult to get them usually. Just hang in there and don't hang up the phone. Don't get off the phone.
I got an agent through doing, at first, and I did it through doing showcases in New York City, and also having those interested agents visit me in my summer theater work. The greatest influences on me in the theater, I guess I have to, in one sentence, bring down to two people who were my teachers, William Hansen, who is not with us anymore, a great teacher, and a teacher director who is with us named Joseph Anthony.
Oh, yeah, Joe Anthony. Would you like to give you that?
I have an agent whose name is Marion Searching, and over the years, I think we've become relatives. And I'm satisfied, and so is she. And I would have to say that the most pervasive, sustaining, and overall important influence on me has been my own wife, Ruby D. Although there are many names I could call, including Howard Da Silva, who made tremendous impact, helped to change my life. Over the long haul, it's been Ruby.
Yes, I have an agent, and they've become, over the time I've been with them, very good friends, so I don't have the problem on the phone that Swoosie has. And they're nice people, and I trust them, and we have nice relationships. I still think of Jean Frankel as having been a very influential person in my life in terms of my career and in terms of what I've learned. I still quote him. I told Swoosie when we were on our break that Jean once said, "The hardest thing about our work is to do it."
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to end on that note. And once again, there's just not enough time. And there is so much that these wonderful panelists can tell us, but we've run out of time. And so I have to say that these seminars on working in the theater have been produced by the American Theater Wing, and they are at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York on 42nd Street. And this seminar was on the performance. Our panelists today are a wonderful group of talented performers who have contributed their time and their energy and their knowledge to the American Theater Wing for you, the audience. And so to both of you, thank you, audience, and thank you.